Greetings and welcome everyone to the Climate Justice Leaders webinar that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Women's Rights and Promotion Organization in Taiwan have organized today. We are here at a parallel event to the 66th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. A very warm welcome to all our distinguished speakers and guests, and of course you who are joining us to watch and participate through the live stream today. Climate change, poverty, gender inequality are all increasingly recognized as global issues. Solving these interrelated issues has proven to be challenging, as we all know. Climate change threatens women, and it threatens our wider gender-based health disparities, especially in low and middle income countries. And for example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was reported that women spend time collecting clean water rather than spending time participating in economic activities or accessing resources, and spending more time collecting adequate clean water, sometimes to the point where there was not even enough for their own hygienic needs, and that their own hygiene and sanitation was compromised. This is just one aspect that we know and that we bring up as a concrete, practical example. But we also know that Taiwan is a leading role in the gender equality area, not only in Asia, but across the global stage. It recognizes the issues that have been associated with gender equality for many, many years, and is so dedicated to promoting women's rights and the advancement of women in every area, according to CEDAW, the Convention to Eliminate All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which many of you know. So in the area of climate change, Taiwan also understands and recognizes how it is inextricably linked to women's actions. And by helping achieve gender equality and participating in action for equality in this particular area, we know that the Taiwanese women across the board and people of Taiwan have shown incredible resilience and are actors and agents of change. I can say that Taiwan as an island has had many different kinds of disasters. And in 1999, I remember the devastating earthquake and how many of the women came to the UN. At that time, I was working inside the UN, and Professor Chong Trey and Professor Shang Longran came and spoke about the devastation, especially in Puli, a town in Nantou County that was really severely damaged as a result of this earthquake. So we know that women and girls in Taiwan have already been dealing with issues of humanitarian disasters and have had incredible resilience. So this is something that they're building upon with their own prior experiences. So I'd like to move on now to really talk a little bit about the theme that we have. We know that women in positions of leadership and in positions of power are so critical to having women and girls become participating to advance climate justice, and in those efforts to really have different kinds of programs and different kinds of policies in effect to reduce and to eliminate the effects that we feel from climate change. And we know that as civil society leaders, they have an important role to play as well as our elected and appointed government officials. We all have to work together hand in hand in order to have this effect of achieving more climate justice for women and girls. Today, we have a very rich program. We have 3 different sections of our program, and our first program deals with keynote speeches and dialogue. We have people who are from the political sector today joining us. We're very honored to have our distinguished speakers. We have 3 speakers, Minister May Hua Wang, we have Baroness Natalie Louise Bennett, and we have Minister Kitlang Kabua. We may have some technical difficulty with Baroness, but we will do our best to accommodate her and to make this as smooth as possible. I'd like to bring in, though, some of the bios of these highly accomplished women who are joining us today, who made time in their schedule because they truly believe that this is such an important issue, and they want to share with us some of their remarks. So let me turn first to Minister May Hua Wang. She is the Minister of Economic Affairs in Taiwan, and her background is a Bachelor of Law from National Taiwan University, NTU. She has a whole list that I have in front of me, so many pages of achievements and accomplishments. Deputy Minister, Ministry of Economic Affairs, Vice Minister, Ministry of Economic Affairs, Director General, the Intellectual Property Office, Deputy Director General from the Intellectual Property Office, the Trademark Division, the Patent Division, the Legal Affairs Office, Petitions and Appeals Committee. I mean, a very rich and long breadth of experience, technical experience, and experience that gives her a wonderful viewpoint and vantage point. So without further ado, I would like to invite Her Excellency, Minister May Hua Wang. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So please open up my slides. Okay, thank you. So let me very brief introduce the net zero transition in Taiwan. Please, next page. So facing the urgency of the global climate change, many countries and international companies around the world have committed to achieve net zero emission by 2050. Taiwan, as an export-oriented country, plays an important role in global supply chain. We have a very strong connection with the international community. So accelerating the development of sustainable energy ecosystem is our responsibility. Our President Tsai announced last year to launch Taiwan's net zero transition program. She is the key person to push energy transition in Taiwan. We regard the net zero transition as an obligation, also an opportunity to enhance our competitiveness and international influence. Next page. My Ministry of Economic Affairs is in charge of the energy sector and industry sectors. Both sectors count for 75% of domestic carbon emission. They are our major emitters and key to net zero transition. My ministry bears the greatest responsibility for reducing carbon emission in Taiwan. I myself supervise actively the progress of projects. Not only technical problem solving, it also requires a close cooperation among interagencies. As transition takes time, we would like to promote the net zero transition step by step. The first step, our goal is to achieve low carbon emission through the joint effort by government and industry. The second stage, we will achieve our goal of zero carbon emission by enhanced technology. Next page. As for the energy sector, we will focus on maximizing the use of renewable energy, such as offshore wind and solar power. These two are our priority of renewable energy installation. We complete our first offshore wind farm in 2019. We plan to achieve 5.6 gigawatt offshore wind power by 2025. It will create investment of about $35 billion US and also create about 20,000 job opportunities. Besides, the hydrogen is also an important source for zero carbon. We have started the planning process for its future supply, infrastructure, and the application. Our government also encourage the industry to take responsibility to implement net zero transition. Their main strategy will focus on process improvement, fuel switch, and the circular economy. They will use low carbon technology, zero carbon fuels, and also improve material efficiency to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions effectively. We also encourage the integration between the research institution and the leading company to achieve the goal collectively. Next page. Another policy tool is to promote the electric vehicle. It's also a common strategy for most of the world. But, in the traditional car industry, it will definitely be affected by this transition. We are aware of this inevitable impact, so we start to provide some mechanism to facilitate the transformation. Next page. The traditional era provides a relatively fewer opportunity for women in the energy sector. The new net zero market will create a new ecosystem. It provides a great opportunity for women. Take the offshore wind as an example. The proportion of female workforce in Taiwan's offshore wind power industry is 26%, which is higher than the global average and the Asia Pacific countries. So it's quite encouraging for women. Next page. Climate change is the most imminent issue at the moment. We should work together to address the challenges collectively. Taiwan has a diverse and inclusive culture. The government is determined to spare no effort in promoting the gender equality. We hope to play a leading role in both areas of climate justice and gender equality. We look forward to working with all of you to achieve a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Your Excellency, for that incredibly wonderful speech that you've given us and the way that you've highlighted so much that's so relevant today. We know about the carbon emissions, and we know how important it is in terms of the energy sector, energy, renewable energy, and jobs where that's concerned, and how women fit into that. We so appreciate hearing from you in a little while. But I'd like to turn us over now to have a different perspective. And our next speaker who is with us today is Baroness Natalie Lewis Bennett. She's Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle, who is the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. She was leader of the Green Party from 2012 to 2016, leading the party to a result in the 2015 general election that totaled more votes than in all of the previous general elections added together. Isn't that pretty significant? Isn't that very telling about the power, huh? go. As leader, she was also the first Green to take part in the national television debates that year. Again, another first. She's a member of the board of the European Green Foundation, which has regular contacts with Green parties across Europe. She started her career, though, as a journalist in rural New South Wales and worked for the Bangkok Post, the Telegraph, the Independent, the Times, and she spent 5 years with the Guardian Weekly. She obtained a degree in agricultural science from the University of Sydney and worked on farms in Australia. She then did an Asian Studies degree where she focused on female prime ministers of South Asia, and a master's in mass communication from the University of Leicester. She spent 2 years in Bangkok working with the National Commission on Women's Affairs and on its report to the UN Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, as we know well, the International Women's Rights Bill. But she also worked as a consultant for the ILO on child labor issues and on health issues, women's health issues with WHO. I could go on and on and on, but I do want to say that one of the things she's a champion of is universal basic income. And we know how incredibly important this is when we talk about women and girls, and how important this is to their security, to their stability, to their life and livelihood, and for women and their families, for their children. So without further ado, I think you have a snapshot of the Baroness, and I'd like to invite her now. Baroness, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Denise, and sorry for the delay. And you are at least getting to see behind me, having had to arrange things in a hurry, that it's a lovely day here in London, and that's the Houses of Parliament, Westminster, behind me. You may also hear some children here playing in the park, which wasn't quite the plan, but I think that's a nice sign of these are children who've come to Westminster to learn about politics. And when we're talking about political engagement, I have a phrase that's always my top message that I want to share with everybody, which is that politics should be what you do, not have done to you. Of course, elections and voting and standing for election are terribly important, but actually in tackling the climate emergency, in delivering climate justice, everybody from I talk to 6, 7, 8-year-olds and say, you can do politics. You can start a campaign in your school, maybe to get rid of the plastic cutlery or to get better recycling. And that's doing politics. And that's what we need in this world that faces so many challenges, not just the climate emergency, but also the nature crisis, the fact we're turned our oceans into a plastic soup, the destruction of our soils, all of these things. We need everybody involved and engaged. Now, I want to say thank you very much to Minister Mei Huo-wang for setting out the scene. And I know a little bit about what Taiwan is doing through when I was at the climate talks at COP26 in Glasgow. I went and heard some talks and saw some of the displays, and Taiwan is certainly doing a great deal. But like every country in the world, it needs to do a lot more. The Sustainable Development Goals, the world is signed up to those by 2030, but there's not one country on this planet who is in line to meet those Sustainable Development Goals, of which, of course, climate is an important, crucial part. I just wanted to show what happens when women and girls get involved. And I know that some people in Taiwan know about this because this is in Sheffield in northern England. A couple of years ago, the council started cutting down the street trees. And that was a real issue for the climate, obviously, but also for people's public health and for nature. And there was a very big campaign, a very heated campaign. Lots of people went out on the streets, chained themselves to things. And this is a story of what doing politics can achieve, because Sheffield now has a world-leading street tree management program. And anytime the council is going to do anything to a street tree, they talk to the campaigners, they make sure they agree with what's happening, and those campaigners are now planting lots more trees. So that's a case of people doing politics. And I think the other message I'd really like to deliver today is we all need hope for the future. And there's it's a difficult world. We cannot deny that fact. And it's a world in which women and girls aren't given anything like their fair share of voice, their fair share of power. But we can't expect that it will be given to us. We have to go out and take it. And I've worked a lot with the Women's Environmental Network here in the UK. And a few years ago, I was with them at an event. And we were talking, of course, there's many issues about climate emergency, particularly in the global south, affecting women and girls the most. In Britain, we have cold homes, and it's women and girls who are often in those homes and suffering with those poor quality of homes that they can't afford to heat. But really, all of these things, we can get women and girls involved, but it's not just enough to have women in the room. We need women in control. And there's a real message to be given, which is that there's enough resources on this planet for everyone to have a decent life if we just share them out fairly. And we have what is literally now a man-made world. It's a system made by men for men. What we need is, the slogan is system change, not climate change. What women need is a system change to a truly equitable, fair society, one where they have access to enough resources for a good life, where, as you said, Denise, with universal basic income, people can choose how to use their talents, skills. Look around, they know far better than anybody else how to best use those skills. And we're not going to tackle all the world's problems unless we have all of those talents, skills and energy of women and girls involved. So thank you very much, and I'm really glad that so many people are with us today.
Thank you so much, Baroness. We appreciate you being with us and for bringing out the underlying values, I think, that are critical. When you talk about system change, we talk about these underlying values, you know, of values that are opposite of patriarchy. We are talking not about domination. We're talking about collaboration. We're talking about inclusion. We're talking about sustainability. We're talking about care and kindness. I think this is what we see a lot in nonviolence, you know, and it is about equity and justice coming from those, I think, values. And one of the things that I think is so inspiring from your talk is how you really believe in empowering women and girls so that they can be the best that they possibly can be, and they can see that the world is open to them, for them. It's a world for them, and that they can participate in every way possible. So aside from all your other remarks, I think that this is an important kernel, you know, to take away, because sometimes we focus on the technical and the legal, or we focus on, you know, let's say, for example, you know, the carbon emission and the percentage of what needs to be met, rather than looking at the big picture, the system of it, the institutionalized way that has been so entrenched and that keeps everyone entrenched in these ways with these old patterns, you know, and how do we change that? That is the $64,000 question that we've been working on for decades and decades. So that's a very important contribution that maybe we can get into later, or we can hear from some of our other speakers. I'd like to now turn to a different perspective, someone coming from another island state. We have another very accomplished minister joining us, Her Excellency Kitlana Kabua. Kitlana Kabua is the youngest woman ever elected to the Marshallese politics and is the Minister for Education, Sports, and Training for the Republic of the Marshall Islands. She is the first woman elected to Nichela from Kwajalein Atoll and has been a strong advocate for women throughout her professional career. And as those of you can see, she has a beautiful, I'd like to say, I don't want to say headdress, but she has a beautiful floral, arrangement. And aside from delivering her remarks, maybe she can just elaborate a little bit about what that means. The floor is yours, Minister. Please join us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Denise. Nyewe, everyone. Yes, this floral arrangement, we call it wood pelibin. For us in the Marshalls, the most important part of the human body is the head. And us women, we are central to the Marshallese culture. So to showcase the importance of women, we like to don these head ornaments, floral ornaments. But this is a contemporary one that's made from dried pandanus leaves instead of the live flowers. But these are all products of women in the Marshall Islands.
It's so
Yes,
beautiful. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for bringing in nature. We are part of nature, and for you to bring it in, I think, is something that really helps us to get in touch with that part of ourselves too. So we would love to hear your remarks about your practice on the efforts to reduce climate change and gender climate justice. Please join us for this aspect too.
Thank you very much, Denise. I bring warm greetings of Yahweh from the people of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. I want to thank Excellency Minister Mei Hua Wang and Baroness Bennett for joining me in dialogue. And I just want to say that I am humbled to be in the virtual presence of such powerful, influential women. I'm so happy to be here today. While I joined today as a member from the cabinet of our government, these issues are also personal. We are talking about we are not talking about remote statistics or dry policy documents, but also about our very own lives and livelihoods, our own home, families, and backyards. Despite advances around the world and in our nations, there remain critical barriers to achieving gender equality. And at the same time, climate change impacts are now increasingly evident on the ground and in our local communities, in the Marshall Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Taken together, gender justice and climate justice are closely tied together. Our small atoll nation has no higher ground, no mountains, nor that is truly safe from rising seas. Climate adaptation cuts across all key sectors of our nation as a vital priority. This is equally true for gender advancement. It would be an injustice to not focus on women and gender in our present climate policy efforts, but no less of an injustice to not put every amount of possible effort in ensuring our youngest and future generations, especially women and girls, can not only survive, but also thrive in a future which will be dominated by climate-driven impacts. To do that, we have to truly be at the table for planning, designing, implementing our climate-resilient future as women and girls, as Marshallese, and as global citizens. We cannot do it alone here in the Marshalls. We know that physical responses to climate change will cost far beyond our finances. These are only part of the complex challenge. If king tide storms and extreme weather events continue to ravage our shores, sea level continues to rise, and as oceans continue to warm and become more acidic, bleaching and destroying our coral that represents our nation's very foundation, we will be left with limited options. And to successfully address gender equality and women's empowerment, we have to continue to dramatically change not only our government policy, but also to better educate and adjust our society to make better choices about domestic violence and rightful participation of women and girls at every level of public life. Taking these two tasks together demands we work with our closest friends to tackle these tough challenges together to turn words into actions and actions into results in our local communities. The Republic of the Marshall Islands has been a close partner with the Republic of China, Taiwan, in addressing climate change and matters of gender rights. Taiwan is an important development partner, assisting us addressing the Sustainable Development Goals and working with local communities on the ground, including improving our agriculture system, assisting with delivering solar energy to our remote outer island communities, and other grassroots initiatives. Our long-standing friendship is also anchored on a strong people-to-people exchange. Taiwan has been instrumental in establishing our landmark Women Business Small Loan Revolving Fund, what we call our Karay Mankul Fund. This fund has been providing tangible support for women's economic empowerment and can be the seed to grow innovative aspirations for our local communities. This fund is a key step forward in addressing the gender gap in underemployment and unemployment. Taiwan also has much to share with the rest of the world. The Republic of the Marshall Islands will continue to emphasize the rightful participation of ROC Taiwan in the UN system, including specialized agencies such as WHO, UNFCCC, and ICAO. We know that in the Marshall Islands, women are more vulnerable than men to the effects of humanitarian crises, such as the climate change impacts that we see today. As women, our critical role in recovery and resilience is gaining recognition. Women often bear the brunt of climate change effects. Events like the inundation and the drought necessitate the relocation of families, and in some cases, of communities. As a traditional homemakers, women are put under pressure to ensure that our families are able to meet needs. We have seen drought crises which have reduced women's income from handicrafts because of reduced supply of raw materials, such as the pandanus leaves and coconuts. We also see that because of frequent and severe droughts, women are forced to increase more time and effort, and in some cases, finances to secure safer water and food for consumption, and other key tasks to safeguard their families. As the Marshall Islands moves into an accelerated mode to address and adapt to climate impacts and push for gender advancements, we have to engage with international partners such as Taiwan for mutual support and knowledge exchange. These activities must include gender-responsive disaster risk prevention, disaster reduction and resilience building, as well as strengthening women's participation in ensuring environmental sustainability. For us, climate change is not a mere phrase. It means moving from paper plans and conference rooms to achieving results with our most vulnerable populations and communities. And to truly be resilient in these changing times, we have to continue to strive for gender equality to ensure that half of the world's population, us, women and girls, are at the forefront of decision making. Thank you, and komodada.
Thank you, Minister. I think that you really conveyed how imminent the situation of climate change is to your island and how personal these issues are to everyone in your nation. And sometimes a lot of people, myself included, living in the United States, don't realize the immediate impact that people are facing right now and what that means. It's not something out there 10 years, it's right now in your country. And the precious international partnership that you have with Taiwan has, I believe, really been so significant in helping in so many ways to help with underemployment of women and to help women's economic empowerment, but also in this area that we're talking about now too. So while we're on this topic, I think that you really brought up the biggest challenge that you may be facing, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'll start with you, since you have alluded to it now, Minister Kabua. What is the greatest challenge that you're facing in the Marshall Islands, and what is your plan? How are you expecting to deal with that?
Thank you once again, Denise. For low-lying atolls such as the Marshall Islands, climate change is our greatest threat, as I mentioned earlier. We are already experiencing loss and damage, and we can no longer delay making progress on this issue, however sensitive it may be. We are extremely vulnerable to natural disasters and susceptible to the effects of tropical storms and typhoons and storm surges, droughts. The direct and indirect impacts of these threats intensifies and amplifies the existing challenges of our country, but are especially detrimental for the most vulnerable of groups, who are our women and girls. Our National Adaptation Plan, which we call our Survival Plan, is a huge undertaking. Ensuring women and girls' voices are heard and prioritized will be a key part of our work to ensure that our most vulnerable community members are protected. But we can also protect ourselves so far before there are irreversible loss and damage. If the rest of the world takes too long to step up their ambitions, or if they don't match their finances to support developing nations such as ours in the Marshalls, so that we can actually implement our plan, all this work that we've conducted thus far will all be for naught. Our biggest challenge is to get the highest emitting nations to catch up to what we in our islands already know, that the climate crisis is here, and we must work as a collective to save humanity from the brink of extinction. Our biggest challenge is that our island survival depends not only on ourselves and what we do to protect ourselves. It really relies on others and on the larger emitting nations to make necessary sacrifices. Our solution is to continue to focus our efforts in the international arena. This means that we will continue to prioritize our high-level leadership presence at the UNFCCC COP negotiations, understanding that this is one of the few places where developing nations, such as the Marshall Islands, still has a seat at the table and a voice to be heard. We will hold that moral line and authority while amplifying our stories of threats and survival. We will continue to hold other nations accountable for their actions. A global threat requires global solutions, and for us to reach these solutions, we will need to find a way to work together. We have a Marshallese proverb which states, "An pilingiling obalomako," which literally translates to droplets combine, create a mighty ocean. We can also use this proverb to say that we are individual droplets of water, but if we band together, we are as strong and mighty as the ocean. This speaks to the power that we have when we bond together with great purpose. And the Marshall Islands will continue its plight for climate justice, which will require all of us, especially women, to be that solution for this generation and generations to come. Thank you once again, Denise.
Thank you, Minister. I wish we had more time for you to really go into the survival plan that your country has put together so that we could have a better understanding of what that means and how women and girls are involved in that. But we must move on, and I'm hoping that we can get together at another time, or feel free to send in your questions that we can provide to Her Excellency, Minister Kabua, if you are interested in knowing more about this. Appreciate so much the poetry that you share with us in terms of the way you talk about these droplets combined to really talk about our collective action to save humanity. You know, it is about these greater purposes and our greater values coming together so that we can make this revolutionary difference interference in the evolution of our humanity and of our planet so that we can continue to evolve and to experience what this is all about, life and living. I'd like to move on now to ask the same question to Her Excellency Minister Wang. What is the biggest challenge you are facing, and what is your plan to deal with it? The floor is yours, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you. So my answer is more practical. Follow my presentation. I continue to mention to reply your answers. In Taiwan, the development of different renewable energy involves with regulation in charge by different ministries. So it needs interagencies cooperation to deal with installation barriers. Taking offshore wind and the solar power as an example, we need to solve a lot of the issues, such as land, environment impact assessment, fishery rights compensation, labor, and permit. Those issues are very complicated. So we need to constantly communicate with different agencies. And besides, local government also play an important role in the process. They can facilitate the installation application and speed up the review process. Each issue has different barriers and the complexity. We have been putting a lot of the efforts in communicating with different agencies, local governments, and the interested party to push forward with renewable energy installation. I think one of women is good qualities is patient. So women are also good at communicating. This new energy market is definitely a good opportunity for women. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I think that one of the things you also just brought out, interagency cooperation, goes in hand with what Minister Kabua talked about in terms of collective action. You know, we all need to work together. And I used to work at the very beginning of my legal career for the city of New York. So I fully understand how important the interagency cooperation is and how difficult and challenging it very well can be. But to your point, though, when we talk about having policies at the top, at the very high level of government, how do we bring it to the local level, you know, to really have it affect people in their daily lives, where they live? And this is critical, too. So by having more women in these positions to help with the implementation is also very significant. So we appreciate you bringing out this point and to show how, again, you know, we do have women at all levels able to participate and to create change even in these ways. So important to understand as we talk about the large picture. Sometimes we feel that we can get lost and there is no place. So thank you again, Your Excellency. Appreciate your time with us today. Finally, I'd like to turn back to Baroness to see if she is available to ask the same question that I've asked our two ministers. What is the biggest challenge that you're facing and the way you plan to deal with it? The floor is yours, Baroness.
Thank you very much, Denise, and it's a great pleasure to follow two such powerful contributions, with Minister Wang very much focusing on the importance of the local and community, but also I think the powerful words we heard from Minister Kabua, which reflects what we saw at the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow, where there is a tremendous moral force in the voices, particularly of women from the global south, from the small island nations. I chaired an event on with a group trying to create an offensive ecocide, saying we have to protect this planet, our ecosystems, with a speaker from a young woman from the Brazilian Amazon, from an indigenous group. And that was the most powerful contribution that I heard at COP26. So it's really crucial to get those voices heard. But in terms of the problems we face, I want to pick up a point made by Minister Kabua about food and ensuring food security. And I think in the UK, we have a government that thinks, well, we just have to rely on the market and the global market will provide. But the fact is, food banks are one of the fastest growing elements of British society. Millions of people are food insecure in the wealthy UK. And I think that we have to face up that problem around the world and acknowledge that at the moment there's enough food on this planet for everyone to have a perfectly good diet. It's just not distributed. Poverty means people don't have access to it. But in the climate emergency, the future, to stop wasting food and feeding food to animals in factory farms, food that humans could eat much more efficiently, is a huge amount of food waste. That's the problem. But what we also see here in the UK, and I know in many other places, is local community groups coming and growing food locally in a little patch in the park, rescuing food from supermarkets that otherwise would have gone to waste and cooking it up into healthy meals for people. And that's ensuring food security as a community effort, not something for the market, but something we all get together to ensure. So I think we're facing a huge problem of food insecurity. The solution is women, community groups, starting with the local, and making sure that government acts to empower those things, not to be a barrier to them. So people sometimes ask me, what level should I work at? Should I work at the community level? Should I get elected to my council? Should I try and get elected to Parliament? I'd say do politics at whatever level works for you, suits you. And also don't try and do it on your own. Get a group of supporters around you, particularly women. And not everyone might want to be the person who gets up and speaks in Parliament, as I do behind me, who gets on their local council. But behind one woman can be another dozen or 20 women who are supporting her and helping her and doing her research and maybe filling her fridge with food. A team of women together can do amazing things, and they're already doing it in tackling food insecurity. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Baroness, again for bringing up such important points that so many people around the world are facing. When we talk about food insecurity, I can't help but really see all of the pantries and refrigerators that are outside on sidewalks around the world because people need food. They don't have food. And, you know, trying to feed families is one of the most difficult things, I believe, for a mother to do when you don't have anything and you're trying to make your children have something so that they can really be able to have some sort of sustenance is critical. We see that in New York City. I mean, it's all over. And to your point that there is enough for all, there is enough for all. And it gets back to the idea of the system change that you talked about and the way that patriarchy has been so ingrained. But the hopeful thing that I like to bring from this particular segment of today's event is the power of cooperation, the power of collaboration, of working together, and these values. And I think that this is something that we've heard is so positive in so many ways, whether you're working at the highest level of government, whether you're working at local government, whether you're working in a community-based organization, or whether you're working with your neighbors side by side in a community garden. I think that we really need to embrace more of our togetherness and the power that we have with one another, and that we can achieve even more change or even greater results from our effort when it's multiplied and we are working in hand with another. You had mentioned Baroness Ecocide, and years ago, this idea of ecofeminism came about. And one of the leading women who has been involved for decades is Vandana Shiva from India. And she would walk the halls of the UN during the Commission on the Status of Women years ago. And she has a very important project these days called Sacred Seed, and really caring for indigenous seeds and seeds that are from the local areas. You could find out more about that. But this is a clear example of a woman who has created incredible change from decades and decades. Another person who I'd like to call attention to, who has been acknowledged and is a Nobel Prize recipient, a laureate, although she passed out of her body, Wangari Maathai. We've heard about the tree projects in England, and I can't help but thinking it traces back to Wangari when she had the Greenbelt movement and was planting trees, and how she was facing death threats because of that. And we know that this still goes on today in the Amazon and many other areas around the world. So we are building upon the examples and of the good work that these women have done and so many other women have done. And we see how we come together around that with new projects and the way that they have changed for today's society. So I want to thank our ministers today. Thank you for arranging your schedule to be with us. Baroness, thank you for being with us today. I think that these extraordinary women have given us so much information, but beyond that have given us so much hope and inspiration. So without further ado, I'd like to again just thank you once again for your interventions, for your participation. And now I'd like to move on to our next segment in today's program. The second segment that we have deals with Power Talks. And I'm very excited because we have today two people from different areas. Again, we have someone from the public arena, from government, but we also have someone from the private sector as well. So first, I would like to say that this is really important to really have the integration or the marriage of the private sector, the public sector, and government. And we have heard Minister Wang allude to that in her remarks a bit earlier. So I'm very excited that we have this segment, and I'm looking forward to what comes from it. So we have today joining us Mayor Wu from the city of Boston in the United States. But we also have with us today, too, someone who is in the private sector from Cathay Financial. So we have Madame Cheng, who is with us. Let me now move on so that I can read a little bit from Mayor Wu's bio so you can get a little taste about her. She could only join us for a short amount of time, but that's really not the problem. It's not a problem. It's just important that she is with us to share a little bit of her vision. So, Michelle Wu is the mayor of Boston. She's the daughter of immigrants, the daughter of Boston public school system, mom of 2 boys. She's a fierce believer that we can solve our deepest challenges through building community. Mayor Wu has been a voice for accessibility, transparency, and community engagement in city leadership. She was first elected to the Boston City Council back in 2013 at the age of 28. She's the first Asian American to serve on the council, and in 2016, she was the first woman of color to serve as the council president when she was elected president of that city council. As a councilor, Mayor Wu was the lead sponsor of Boston's Paid Parental Leave Ordinance and Healthcare Equity Ordinance, prohibiting discrimination based on gender identity. both of which passed unanimously through the council and were signed into law by the former mayor, Mayor Martin Walsh. She also authored Boston's Communication Access Ordinance, which guarantees translation, interpretation, and assistive technology for access to city services, regardless of English language proficiency, communications, or disability. She started in City Hall working for Mayor Thomas Menino, and she was a Rappaport Fellow in Law and Public Policy, where she created the city's first guide to the restaurant permitting process from start to finish, and was a driving force to launch Boston's food truck program. She also served as statewide constituency director in the U.S. Senate campaign of her former law professor, Senator Elizabeth Warren. I could go on and on and on. She also has a background in community advocacy. She worked at the large Wilmer Hale Legal Service Center, and she worked on cases dealing with immigration regarding survivors of domestic violence. She's a graduate from Harvard College and Harvard Law School. She's fluent in both Mandarin and Spanish. So without further ado, I would like to turn over now to Mayor Wu. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, it's Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Thank you so much to the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office for inviting me to join you on today's webinar and share a little bit about how cities can lead on climate action. As a coastal city here in Boston, many of the effects of climate change that we are facing mirror the challenges that Taiwan faces as an island. While we don't have typhoons here, recent summers have brought extreme heat and stronger storms. And as tides have risen, our streets have started flooding more frequently. Winters have grown more erratic, with heavy snowstorms followed by warm, sunny days. And the impacts of these changes often hit our most vulnerable communities hardest. That's why in Boston, we're forging a path to be a national leader in climate action by becoming a Green New Deal city. But we know that addressing climate change and building climate resilience requires collaboration. We need to partner across industries and sectors, across the country and around the globe. We need partnerships like this one. Our relationship with Taipei is one we cherish. Nearly 30 years ago, Boston signed a sister city agreement to exchange insights and innovations in business, culture, and education. From world-class universities to cutting-edge innovation and thriving arts and culture, we are proud of all that our two cities share. And we're grateful for all the ways in which we continue to learn from each other. From green walls and rooftops to permeable pavement and minimum requirements for renewable energy production, Taipei is leading by example when it comes to green infrastructure and urban sustainability practices. It's our hope that cities the world over will join us in drawing inspiration from all that Taipei has already done to build a greener, more resilient future for all of us. We also know that a just transition to a green economy is an opportunity to promote public health, create jobs, and focus investment in under-resourced communities. In just over 100 days in office, here in Boston, we've divested city funds from fossil fuels and other harmful industries, expanded a fare-free bus program to make public transit more accessible, and taken steps to reduce vehicle emissions and promote electrification. We've encouraged residents to choose greener electricity options through our Community Choice Electricity Program, and we're developing a Green Jobs Initiative to prepare our young people and communities for the jobs of the future. While our cities are on opposite sides of the globe, we're united in our vision to create communities that are safe, strong, and healthy. Communities that live in harmony with our environment. Achieving that vision will take partnership at every level, and not just between our two cities, but between governments and businesses, nonprofits, and climate leaders all over the world. So in closing, I'd like to say thank you again for your leadership and for your partnership, for joining us in demonstrating what a greener future could look like and what it will take to get there. I hope to connect in person with everyone soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Wu. We appreciate you being with us. And a lot of the remarks that you made did echo Minister Wang when you spoke about the collaboration, the partnerships, but also the electrification of motor vehicles, the diversification in renewable energy, and of course, increasing jobs, which includes women. So I think there is a theme running here. And I look forward to hearing from our next speaker, as I'm sure you do too. For those of you who are joining us, we have the Climate Justice Seminar today that has been organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Women's Rights Promotion from Taiwan. So we will now go on for our next speaker, joining us from the private sector. It's my delight to welcome Sophia Cheng. She's the Chief Investment Officer, a female Chief Investment Officer of Cathay Financial Holdings and the chair of the Asia Investor Group on Climate Change. That's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. Sophia Cheng is the person who has taught in the Department of International Business of NTU. She has 30 years of research and investment. Her last position was acting as chairman and head of research of Merrill Lynch in Taiwan. She's highly regarded by government, as I can understand why. She's well known for her work in financial sector research and her proactive participation in forming government policies, including promoting banking reform and tax reform. She's been appointed as government affairs consultant of the Executive Yuan and advisory committee member of National Development Council since 2012 and 2015. I want to go on and say that she's been actively promoting corporate sustainability and responsible investment in Taiwan. She's been selected as a 2019 Asia's top sustainability superwoman and 2021, let me get this correct, Global Top 50 Women in Investment Management. As you can see, everyone, we have powerful women with us today, and Ms. Cheng is no exception. Without further ado, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Can you hear me well? Good, thank you. Thanks for doing such a great job in being moderator and bring a lot of inspiration. I learned so much from it. In the next 2 minutes, I will share some of the trends financial industry has been doing a lot of work and what Cathay has done with our efforts. Next page. I will talk about responsible investment and why climate is so important and our journey. Next page. I remember back in year 2000 when we started to talk about a lot more about corporate governance. Corporate no longer just think about earnings, profit, dollar sign. And then they have to work on corporate governance, where roughly over 10 years ago, we started to talk about more about social responsibility and also contribution to environment. And we started to talk about sustainability and social prosperity. So in the next page, and there is a common belief that when a company is making money, a country is delivering economic growth, it is very important to also look at the impact to society and the impact to environment. Where in the next page, we can also see in the past few years, I have noticed that a newer common belief is without a sustainable environment and a stable society, there is no way a company's profit or a country's economic growth can last long. So this is very important. Corporate no longer take maximize profit as their main target. Next page. So you can see globally, there are more than 3,800 financial institutions who signed Principle for Responsible Investment, and the AUM they manage is roughly over 120 trillion US dollar. And we commit together that we will integrate the company's sustainability into our investment decision. We will promote it together. We'll work together to make sure corporate take more responsibility promoting sustainability and the actions. So in the next page, we can see that among all the initiatives, climate change is definitely a systemic risk. And there's no company, no stakeholder can immune from the challenge. This is the table I have put here. You can see based on Swiss Re statistics, in year 2000, man-made and natural disaster combined together has made over 200 billion US dollar of economic loss. And that also triggered near 90 billion US dollar insurance claims. And the next page, you can see where they are. The bigger pie means the dollar loss. You can see in the economic loss. And if you look at the numbers, you can see over every decade, we can see the frequency of this natural disaster from drought to flood to storm, from wildfires and to a lot of problems. We can see this will all become sunk costs. Once we repair that, that is a one-time expense. So it is very important how we prevent climate change problem. And at the meantime, we also learn how to adapt ourselves into that. The next page, and I want to share with you, globally, there are already 83 countries who commit to net zero, and it's just a matter of time. Some of them are still under planning right now, but they do have committed. And therefore, on the next page, I'd like to share with you, investors, we all work together as well. On this chart, you can see in the North America, we have Cirrus, which is a combination of NGO plus investors. In Europe, we have institutional investor group on climate change, where to the right-hand side bottom, you can see investor group on climate change, IGCC, which is focused on Australia and New Zealand investors. They also send people to Asia to develop Asia investor group on climate change. We work together also to promote many meaningful initiatives, including Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, the TCFD, as you see in the top there. Also, we reply to CDP questionnaire. We also ask people to have better corporate climate governance. They also need to reply to Carbon Disclosure Project. To the right-hand side, you can also see Climate Action 100+, which we focus on engaging corporate with high emissions, and also renewable energy 100%. This IE 100 is also taking very good momentum this time. Next page. Let's look into this is the initiative before COP26, and UK, Mr. Mark Collins has put together, and the global effort put together as a Glasgow, Glasgow financial. You can see the Glasgow Financial Alliance on net zero. So you can see includes banking as the owner, as a manager, even investment consulting and financial service. So there's also a Paris aligned investment. We all commit together. We will take Paris Agreement aligned investment, and also SDGs as the main core when we make an investment decision. So the next page, we can see the progress in Asia. These Asia Investor Group on climate change already have near 60 members. Cathay is the first members to this, and with our effort, myself now is the chairperson for this. We have already members from 13 countries representing 26 trillion US dollar of assets. That is power. So we learn together, we do work together, we engage corporate together. The next page, we can see the progress in Asia. So far, we already have 15 countries that commit to net zero. And Taiwan, as I highlighted here, we already commit to net zero as well. It's not under legislation. The next page, how about Cathay? Cathay Financials, we are the first one who signed Equator Principle. We also were the first Taiwan financial group self-compliance to Principle for Sustainable Insurance, Principle for Responsible Investment, and Principle for Responsible Banking. Next page. Therefore, our ESG strategy, we focus on climate, health, and empowerment. So this all very perfectly linked with today's seminar. The next page, you can see we care a lot on how to improve financial inclusion, take care of the disadvantaged families, including microfinance, microinsurance, small amount of savings plan for individuals so they can have better retirement life in the future. The next page, you can see our carbon footprinting. We take climate change as a very serious topic for our core business, so that we have to constantly look at for opportunity and risk prevention. You can see on product side, Cathay Life, Cathay United Bank, Cathay P&C Insurance, they put tremendous effort reduce the carbon footprinting for our products, and that's very well recognized by the governments. Where in the next page, you can see our efforts on bank lending book. Starting 3 years ago, we stopped lending to bank loan start lending to coal-fired power plants, where for investment book, if a coal-fired power company, they don't have very aggressive transition plan, we will not make the investment. And in the meantime, we also push the companies we invest asking for their progress, what they are doing. Ourselves, the next page, you can also see we have very aggressive, ambitious target. We're looking for 100% renewable energy for our Taiwan operation, all the footprints by 2030. We also commit to net zero by 2050. The next page. So I put this is something I feel very honored. We have over the past 10 years accumulated a lot of effort. Starting in 2014, we formed the Responsible Investment Team. I put together, you can see the little blue. These highlights are every year I will add 1 or 2 more extra projects from being a DJSI member, Asia Investor Group on Climate Change, PRI, PSI, who support TCFD. We also joined Value Water Global Initiative 2 years ago. And last year, we started to work on detailed zoom into Asia and Asia Utility Engagement Program. We are also a member of the Global Climate Action 100 Plus projects. The next page, I want to share with you some of the meaningful participation we have. Besides the AIGCC, we are also very early in transparency, disclosing our low carbon initiative. We join global investors, inviting in the investor agenda, pushing governments to care about climate governance. The next page, you can see besides ESG, we formally put climate change as our important engagement program. So we joined this Climate Action 100 Plus, which is a very important global initiative, has done very good success. We also, not just ourselves, reply to CDP questionnaire. We invite our stakeholders, they need to reply to this questionnaire. And our performance is very good. They make Taiwan proud. The next page, I just want to share with you on this Climate Action 100 Plus. We have 650 investors who represent $60 trillion of assets. We focus on 167 companies, high emitters, who represent 80% of global emission of manufacturing industry. And of the 167, 33 are in Asia, 3 are in Taiwan. We're very honored to share with you all the 3 companies we engage have all committed to net zero. So we can do a little bit of our influence on this. The next page is the Value Water Finance Task Force, which we joined in year 2020. And we start to work on the next project is focus on high water, high user, and high polluter, similar to Climate Action 100 program. We hope we can also create the power of impact. The next page, back to Taiwan. As you can see on this page, we already done 5 years already on the Climate Change and Sustainable Finance Forum. You can see on this little picture, every year, the audience expands a lot. Where in the next page, you can see last year, our forum, we have more than 1,500 people online, representing 76% of the market capitalization of Taiwan stock market, and also represent more than half of Taiwan's greenhouse gas emission. We're very, very happy. Next page, please. That with our effort, when we talk about SDGs, it's not just ourselves doing it. We have to think about how we collaborate together, how we influence our stakeholders, including government, people who invest in us, people we invest, our supply chain, our employee, and our community. And because we believe only with the country and industry being sustainable can the company's sustainability be secured. The next page. And I also want to share with you our belief is that I think being best in the world is not enough. We should do best for the world. And we are so proud and feel very honored that we spent 8 years to prove you don't have to sacrifice earnings when you do sustainability. The next page. Thank you. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you so much, Madame Chang. That was an incredibly comprehensive presentation, and we appreciate all the data that you've put into it. We understand from your presentation how important financing for climate justice is. We know that environmental sustainability is so important, and to know about these regulations and the work that's going on, I think gives us hope, because that's another key critical component to having more efforts to reduce climate change and to bring in women and girls. I'd like to now move on to our final segment from today. And last but not least, we have a short panel discussion because we started a little late and we're running overtime. So we have three very accomplished young women. And I'd like to introduce the first one who's with us. Tara Deport is the founder and executive director of Human Impacts Institute based in the United States. She founded it in 2010, seeing a need for creative approaches to sustainability and global coalition building. Before that, she worked as a director of environmental education and as program director for a New York City community-based organization. So I'd like to stop there in the sake of time, and I'd like to invite you, Tara, so that you could give us a quick introduction to Human Impacts Institute and what your strategies are to attract more people to join your actions. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here among you, and also it's an honor to be called a young woman. Thank you for that, Denise. So at the Human Impacts Institute, we're really about how do we use arts and culture as a way to connect people to climate solutions. And a lot of that is about connecting climate to other topics such as gender equality, such as economic systems, such as justice in all of our communities. Next slide, please. And as an organization, as I said, this is one of my favorite quotes of this connection between arts and sciences. The faculty of art is to change events. The faculty of science is to foresee them. And the phenomena with which we deal are controlled by art, and they are predicted by science. So I think we can have this idea of how we can envision new futures through the arts, and also use science as a way to really inform our decisions and understand the impacts of our decisions. Next slide. As an organization, a big part of how we work on creative engagement, and we do this both within the US and also mostly in European cities as well, because we really focus on places where the per capita impact on climate are having the greatest negative impacts. So how can we, as individuals, really make a big change? And a big part of that is solution-centered communication. One example of that, next slide, is in New York City. Next slide, please. In New York City, we're working with the state of New York, as well as the Brooklyn Public Library and many other, also starting to work with one of the largest hospital systems there to connect climate to health issues. Certainly during the pandemic and in other times in our lives, health is at the forefront of many of our minds in terms of the health of our family, our community, etc. And so we do that by really doing fellowships, bringing people together and connecting them on how climate and health engage. Next slide, please. Another way we do that is weird combinations of things. Sometimes in order to really engage the public, we need to surprise them. We need to surprise ourselves. Next slide, please. And with that, one example is we put together health experts, for instance, with artists from around the city to really find ways to engage the public. Next slide. This is also an example of, we've worked a lot on climate communications in US cities with the German federal government. And this was an example of a panel discussion we had where we have a venture capitalist next to the founder of one of the largest climate organizations, next to someone who is now a big filmmaker, but who's dressed as a tree in this instance. And this idea of sometimes breaking the preconceived notions we have of who takes part in these conversations and who joins together is very important. Another tool that we use, next slide, please, is really personal stories. And I think we've touched on that with a lot of the sharing today from many different communities. Next slide. One example of this is a project we did with the Permanent Mission of Germany and brought to the climate negotiations back in Madrid. And then it was reprinted on Wall Street. And it's all about telling the personal stories of women and in the global South, and this was in the bottom section of the photo that you're seeing, who are leading on climate in really diverse ways, from accessing through activism, through economics, through education, etc. And in the top portion, you'll see a series of posters that we did of New York City leaders from around the city that we worked with the Department of Transportation to share the stories again of how New Yorkers are taking on climate from many different actions. So you don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be an activist. You can work in every different sector and you can approach it from different ways. But by sharing these personal stories, it gives people an opportunity to connect it with their own story, with their own interests, with their own life. Next slide, please. And another one is shifting narratives. And for me, this is one of the most important ones. And I think we've also touched on this a lot today, of changing the story of who we acknowledge as leaders in our communities. And next slide, please. And so a lot of that is us focusing on particularly leadership of women and youth, and leadership that is not often at the table for decision making, that's not often being highlighted in the press. And these are a couple of examples of young women in New York City that were highlighted in a citywide exhibit that we did. This was actually at the French consulate that we launched it. And talking about their leadership as young women that are from, their families are from other countries, small island nations, and about their leadership. So shifting the narrative and focusing on really who are the leaders in our community and who we should be listening to for the solutions. Next slide. Just have a couple more. And this is an example of the most recent conference in Glasgow. We actually created an exhibit that was all about Indigenous women and youth leadership to really showcase, particularly with the past, because of the pandemic, the lack of, presence of these voices and this type of leadership in the halls of Glasgow. So, ensuring that we're never telling those stories, we're using our privilege and our platforms to be able to share their stories, because they already have the stories and the leadership. It's just about having, helping provide that access. And next slide. And the last one I'll just do on it, and this kind of in terms of tools of how to engage people, is sometimes just the unexpected of how can we draw people in through the arts and culture. And next slide. This is just one example of, we recently, for instance, we have with the support of Taiwan and TECO in New York, we have our annual Creative Climate Awards, where we had last year over 600 creatives from around the world who have submitted films that they're making on climate. And yes, we can have that in a cinema, but instead we worked and we projected these films on the Manhattan Bridge, and having it in a place that's unexpected, where people can happen upon these stories, who can exchange with them, can be very powerful. And I will end there because I know we are limited time, but these are just some of the tools that we use to engage people in creative ways.
Thank you so much, Tara. We appreciate seeing the unexpected. It's really wonderful because it allows us to use our imagination and to really go beyond what we already know, to look for new solutions and to have new efforts. So I am going to turn now to our second speaker today, who's part of the panel discussion. Ann K. Singio is the Executive Director of the Ibil Society in Palau. She started in 2005, and her main goal is to empower communities through education. The floor is yours, Madame Singio.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm very humbled to be part of this panel. And I have some technical difficulty. The video may be a little bit delayed, so please bear with me. If necessary, I may turn off my video just to make the audio a lot better than what it is right now. So from Ibil Society, we focus on environmental studies, and so we provide experiential learning and research to children and youth in Palau and across different international communities, as well as conduct environmental restoration work with small communities. Next slide, please. And I just want to point out that, I'm going to present specifically on a project on women fisheries that we're working on at current. And I just want to show some projections of climate change impact on fishery by 2050. And this is out of a PERCA report for Pacific Islands, where it shows 20% projected decline in coral reef fish by 2050 and over 50% decline in open ocean fishery for most of the Pacific Islands. Next slide, please. A high number of Palauan people, over 70% of Palauan people, rely on the ocean for their main source of protein. Women rely on sea cucumber and clams gathering to support their livelihood, to support their families. 73% of our women dominate the informal markets in Palau. 43% of those women claim this market as their main source of income. And so with this study, we conducted this study to better understand women fishery in Palau. And with this information, we began to look at the current status of the fishery as the result of many factors, environmental factors like climate change, economic factors, social factors, and the mere fact that at the table for decision making, women have been excluded from any decision making, as all development programs assume that fishery is a men-dominated sector. And so what our fishers perceive their fishery, science show a dramatic 89% in decline in the sea cucumber population of Palau. Oh my God, did I lose everything? Okay, I'm going to turn off my video just to make this a little better. Sorry about this.
No apologies. If it's easier to turn off the video, then turn it off so that we can hear you. We appreciate you being considerate. So go ahead.
Okay,
Please
thank
continue.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so the 89% in decline provided by science data is a result of the lack of attention by management on women fishery. It is also a result of a boom-bust trade in sea cucumber within the Pacific Islands and Asian nations. And within 6 months, that boom-bust trade eliminated the sea cucumber fishery in Palau by over 84%, and we have never recovered from that change. And so with all this knowledge, and with recommendations from science and fishers to address this challenge by looking at reseeding of natural habitat to increase sea cucumber stock and natural spawning of sea cucumber, we began to... Can you go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry. I've been speaking way faster than the changing of the slide. Can you go to the next slide? Move on to the next one, please. So with the results of the study and understanding of what the current sea cucumber population looks like, we began to explore the merging of science and traditional knowledge in women from these women fishers to develop an environmental solution to addressing the diminishing women fisheries in Palau. The women provided their knowledge of the species in target and the habitat where they fish, and together with science, we created a very effective spawning program in hatchery with the support Taiwan Technical Mission. And 13 months later, we have increased our hatchery production from 2,500 to over 20,000 seedlings per month. We've increased biomass of the areas where reseeding activities are taking place from 0.003% to 0.03%, and that results in a 5% survival rate for the seedlings in the wild. And at current, we're beginning to observe a wild aggregation of the sea cucumber in those fishing grounds for women. Next slide, please. Today, we are working with small community women fishers to restore their important fishing ground. And we've also initiated a giant clam farm development program for women where they can increase their income. This is a program that has targeted men and excluded women, and we've brought women into this alternative livelihood. And we've also incorporated the lessons learned from this project into our environmental studies program. And so with this approach, we're able to address social problems with the culture of women and children and women and girls. And we're also able to increase resilience of those fishing grounds that women depend on for their livelihood, and also improve the sustainability of those important knowledge into the future generation of girls. Thank you very much. And once again, I apologize for technical difficulty with my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madame Singio. No need to apologize. We fully understand, but appreciate the way you've brought up such important points about understanding about biodiversity and how it's so critical for women and their needs, and how conservation and restoration of our lands, again, is just so critical. These practical examples is a wonderful best practice that you could share with everyone, and really, I think, contributed in a very practical way. Last but not least, we do have one more speaker who's part of our panel discussion today. And I am so delighted to invite a young climate activist from Taiwan, Ms. Shua Ru Wang, with us. She filed a petition about gradually forbidden disposable tableware on a one-stop online civic participation platform. So we look forward to hearing from her, and for her, Ms. Wang, to share her experience of leveraging these public resources to have a grassroots climate activist campaign. Please join us now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good night. I'm Wang Xuanru. I appreciate the chance to share my experience here. So I really appreciate the organizer. And so today I'm going to talk about my initiative of banning the disposable tableware. And this is my very second time to share my experience in English, so I might be a little bit nervous. Hope you don't mind it. Yeah. So today, so next page. Yeah, I'm Wang Xuanru, and I'm now a junior, and I major at Zhongyuan University, and I'm in the Department of Interior Design. Yeah, the department that always stay up late at night. And I'm also a proposer, just as Dina said, I'm a proposer of the banning of the use of disposable tableware as well. And I'm now also as a open government action, just a member of the government issue in that issue. Yeah, so today I'm going to want to I don't know how to say, but I want to talk to you about a story, and that story is it's about a girl. Okay, in 2016, a girl was sitting in the living room and watching TV with her family. They were watching a documentary called Before the Flood, which was shot by Fisher Stevens and Leonardo DiCaprio. In that film, in that documentary, America, India, some areas in Pacific Ocean, just like Marshall Island, and also some Arctic region face severe climate changes like rising sea level, drought, and torrential rain. Those startle scenes show the problems that people need to face right now. The girl was stunned and started thinking about what can I do for the environment I live with. That's the starter of her action, and that's the starter of my action. Okay, next page. Yeah, okay, stating this, please. Okay, and so I just started to initiate my proposal. So I just proposed my proposal on a joint platform, and this kind of platform just can, you can take your idea on that website. So I just write down my ideas and I just take it onto the internet. And after 1 month, the internet got, my proposal got 5,253 agreement. So I think people in Taiwan really agree with we need to phasing out the use of disposable tableware. So people agree with this idea. So in the year of 2017, when I was only 17, I got a chance to talk with the government, the manufacturer of the disposable tableware, to discuss about our situation and our opinions. Of course, I confronted some challenges, When I just in that conference, I expressed my feeling and my ideas about how to phasing out the use. But at the same time, those manufacturers, they really mad at me, I think, because I just make them have no benefit to get in their industry. So they really, I don't know how to express, but they don't got a very good attitude on me. They got a bad attitude on me because I think I am their enemy, Yeah, so you might be very curious about why I want to, not only about documentary, I got other reasons that I want to mention about this proposal. So please, next slides. So the reasons, there's two, because I just, not only a documentary, because based on my daily observation, I saw that in my hometown, Hsinchu, a city in Taiwan, they got several night market. And in that night market, people will get their maybe some dinner or breakfast dinners. Just they always got some dinner there, and when they just take out their dinner, there's a lot of plastic bag and paper box, and also chopsticks, a bamboo chopstick, in their lunch, in their dinner. So there is really cause a lot of trash, and trash issue is really closely related about climate change. So I think this is the problem I saw. So I want to change this situation. So next page, please. Yes, so in my social studies homework in my high school time, my teacher asked all of us to propose a proposal or agree others propose. And in that time, so I just find that I can just initiate a proposal there. So this is how the joint platform works. So not only back to then I was only 17. I got no rights to vote for my own voice. So I can speak up for my voice due to the platform there. Yeah. So just next page, please. Thank you. So the outcome is that in that, let me check out what the slides on. Yeah, so now based on that experience, some government asked me to be a member of the action, plan. And next slide, thank you. And now in Taiwan, there's no longer, you can see in some restaurant or some food count, you can take the disposable tableware here. Things about, I think it's based on a little bit based on my proposal. Yeah, so now in Starbucks, McDonald's, they are not going to offer us any more disposable tableware like plastic straw. Okay, so the next page. Yeah, and also some high school students, they got some inspiration about they're going to propose a proposal on the same website too. There are some questions about their education system, so they proposed that on the website. At the same time, they got 8,000 agreement on that proposal. So they are just very amazing. So people just like us, like students, we can also speak up for a voice just due to that website. Yeah, so everyone might be very curious about how to find out the problems in our daily life. So next slide. So that is a very beautiful thing that I saw in last September in Taiwan, in Green Island. The environment is very, very beautiful in Taiwan. Taiwan is really a beautiful place with ocean and mountain. Next slide. And this is, at the same time, this is the same places I went, just Green Island. I went first time of scuba diving, and this is my very first time to meet a sea turtle. You know, there's a clip on the on the internet, and there's a sea turtle, which his nose got a plastic straw. I don't know. Maybe we watched the video before, but I think this is my very first time to saw the environment and saw the creatures in that environment. So in a very, very small island like Taiwan, I think it's really important to, get more attention on the environment issue. And next page, thank you. But there is the truth. This is a first time I went to beach cleaning. So I saw very, very many trash there and very many plastic products there. And this is the truth we need to face. And I always wish that we could do much more better than we did now. Okay, let's see next slides. So as Gandhi said, we can be the change we want to see. And next. And I think this is my opinion, my point of view. We can be more observant no matter which field we are major at, and we can dare to be different. Just as me, I major at my department is interior design, but I also can care about the environment. And the very next is to turn your passion into a driving force into your living. And next, please. And here's my contact information. And I'm a little nervous today, but I hope you can get my point of view. Yeah, so very thank you. Thank you again. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wang. Don't worry about your nervousness. You came across very poised, and we appreciate you and having your voice with us, because you've really shown how powerful women and girls are when they have their voice and they express it. So I want to congratulate you on such a successful campaign, and a campaign that motivated other students and other people to take action, because that's part of what we're doing today, sharing these best practices to motivate and inspire people to know that they can actually be part of the change. As you had the Gandhi Ji quote there, we can be part of the change that we wish to see in the world. And you actually have put that into practice. You've lived those values. So with our climate change and our climate justice webinar today, we've had a very rich contributing group of very powerful women from the highest level of political office to people who are just like everyday people living life, trying to live life, who are students, who are housewives, people who are in community-based organizations, people in the financial area. What do we say when we talk about climate change and climate justice for women and girls? We know that it affects every aspect of their life, of our lives, right? From health to education, to the financial sector, to the arts. We can talk about using information communication technologies to have a grassroots campaign, you know, and that I think is something that we all can take into ourselves, because today using information communication technology is something that is so important. It's a very convenient way, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the lack of the ability to connect and the social distancing. It has proven to be a very important tool. But, you know, at the same time, I think that one of the things we can take away is the power of women and storytelling and the way that they've shared from their heart and from their own personal experience. We've heard this from Minister Wang all the way down to Madame Wang, who just spoke with us now. And I think one of the major themes that have come out of today's session is collaboration, cooperation, partnerships, interdependence. I think that all of this is the driving force of how we talk about including women and girls, how they are agents for change, and how they can be incredibly extraordinary, remarkable, powerful actors to create a better world, to create a more equitable world, to create a more just world, but again, to create a safer world, a world where we are all protected, where we live in harmony with our elements, and where we have sustainability. At the end of the day, it's about sustainability of our beautiful planet and of our humanity. I hope that you have enjoyed this session today and that you've learned a lot and that it has been so inspiring to you. So this is Denise Scotto signing off from this parallel event to the 66th UN Commission on the Status of Women special session on climate justice. Oh, no, I recognize your voice. Thank you, Annie. I'm sorry about